Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, April 4th of 2023. It's the regular council meeting for the town of Rocky Mountain House. 2.1, Acknowledgement of Indigenous Peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous people, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. For number 3, adoption of the agenda. 3.1, I believe Councillor Phillips has an addition to the agenda.
Yes, I do. I'd like to add under item 8.4, it's a conference on April 7th and 28th in Edmonton. And I just thought we should probably talk about it now as the conference itself is tight after our next council meeting.
What is it called again?
It's
The conference on? What is the conference on?
the conference is on local abuse for local government officials.
Okay, does anybody else have any other agenda items? Does anyone have any problems with adding the seminar for abuse of elected officials to today's agenda for 8.4? Okay, so I'll need a motion to accept the agenda as a...
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So today we have no delegations and adoption of the previous minutes. Is there any issues with the previous minutes as circulated? Councillor Schipel.
Under 5.2, I don't think that reads right when I read it. I just would like to just maybe change the wording on 5.2 relative to how it reads. So it's a 3-month recreational pass, and then it goes into 6 months, and so it just seems a bit confusing in terms of how that reads.
Yeah, it should just about read, for the next 6 months,
Yeah.
you can apply for a 3-month rec pass. Is that
Yes.
more
Yeah.
clear of what we actually intended?
Yeah, just some wordsmithing in that one. That's just to
I
make it
didn't
more
notice that
clear.
at the meeting.
And 8.2 would be the same thing. It just needs a bit of wordsmithing in terms of it as well. Just that I'll be bringing greetings from the town, and if anybody else wants to join, they can join. The way it goes on, the town councils are going to provide a speech.
So Councillor Schipel is going to provide the speech, and any other councillors that would attend are allowed to. So just provide the speech needs to go after Councillor Schipel before the rest of any other councillors who wish to attend are free to do so. Does that sound fair to the intention of the resolution? Anybody else have any comments for last week's agenda? All right, sorry, minutes.
I will so move those minutes with the two changes to 5.2 and 8.2, just for word clarification on those.
Okay, that sounds fair. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So, no, we have no delegation business. On to 7.1, old business. The RFD for anti-racial discrimination and anti-racism policy. And that's 7.1. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Your Worship. Just making sure you're ready.
Mr. Kraus, yeah.
So, this was presented to council at the last council meeting. Council asked for additional time to review. So this is the revised anti-racism, anti-discrimination policy. Council initially asked for the definition of anti-Semitism to be added, which has been added, and on review that the previous policy was lacking a process for dealing with complaints. So that has been added into the policy, as council can see. And it's, just want to make a note, this policy only applies to the town as an organization. It has no effect on the public. It's just that if a member of public is in one of our facilities and wearing a symbol of hate or showing racism attitudes, they can be asked to leave the
Right.
building.
So it does apply to the public while they're on town buildings and facilities, but we can't apply it outside of town buildings and facilities. Is that?
That's correct, and it's only limited to asking that person to leave the facility.
Okay. And that goes along with our ability to enforce such until the federal government gets their ducks in a row.
That's correct, your worship. So racism and hate symbols, that's under the criminal code, so it's federal law. So that would be handled by the RCMP.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Schipple, did you have a question?
I have several questions in terms of the wording in the bylaw.
Okay.
At what point are we going to go through the bylaw itself?
And so I think that's what we're going to do right now. Is that correct, Mr. Kroos?
Yeah, I can go through it, or council can ask specific questions on the proposed policy.
What would you prefer, Mr. Kroos? What would you prepared to do already? To go through it?
Your worship, I think I was just going to take questions because this is the second time it's come to
Okay.
council. So.
So then I'll turn over to the questions from Councillor Schipple to get us going.
Okay, under number 2, purpose, 2.1, elected officials, and then it goes on to contractors and volunteers, and I'm not sure if it shouldn't say current contractors, because the word contractors could, you get somebody in here to do something once, and then there's something comes up in terms of this bylaw, could it go back? I'm just wondering if it shouldn't have the word current in front of contractors and volunteers.
Okay, I think the policy is drafted in a sense that it's whether they're in the facilities of the town, but if adding the word current, I mean,
So my thinking was, if you have a contractor that's here and does work today and then isn't do any work for 6 months and then comes back in 6 months and is another contractor to the town, and something should occur in a 6-month window that they're not typically involved as a contractor but on town property. I guess I just wanted to establish the fact that they're a current contractor.
I think it's sort of known that because it's applying to what's happening right now, not in the past, but it's not like you can't come back after somebody, because really all we can do for enforcement is ask them to leave the property at the time, right? There's no other action. So whether they're past, present, or current, the only thing we can actually do for enforcement is ask them to leave the facility properties at that time. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
yeah, it would be a complaint for something that occurred while they were there. So, but if the word current makes council more comfortable, I mean, I don't think it changes any effect of the policy.
The only thing I would like to see with 2.1 is that it should say applies to all individuals on, it's not public property, right? As well as any individual on public property. Is public property the right, should it say instead of public property? Because then people would say, well, is that gonna be Main Street? Like, remember we had some discussion about this before with the flags and things on Main Street. Should it say town facilities?
So, your worship, public property is defined in the policy.
Okay,
For the purpose of this policy, is property owned by the town, including parks, playgrounds, and town facilities.
go ahead with your next one.
Okay. Well, are we gonna put current into that? I just, reading it, I think it makes more sense, because it really defines today, rather, but if no one else is in favor of that, then we move on to the next one.
Do you want to say on-site contractors? Rather than current, would that make everyone happy? To on-site
Oh, we got,
contractors? It's a
Well-
double, right?
the word active will do the trick too.
I'm fine with that. Is it, Counselor Phillips?
Whether it's the word active or current or just says contractors, I'm fine either way, because I think the intent is
Clear.
there, so I'm fine with whatever we do.
Thank you, Counselor Phillips. I think that's a go-ahead to change it to, are you happy with active, Counselor Shippold? Or do you want
Yes.
it? Yeah, okay. So if we change that to active, then we can move forward with that small change. What's your next question?
Number 3.7, decision maker, and should there be a C in there for an elected official? I just wonder. We have, it refers to everything but a decision maker as elected official.
B says council. Do you want it to say C, elected
Oh.
official?
So, your worship, so further down in the policy, it says any complaint against council will be handled through the code of conduct bylaw. So that's why the decision makers is just for staff or
Okay.
The respondent is.
Three point 19. I guess I just wonder if common area, it says public property, and if it shouldn't be common areas added to that as well.
How do you mean by common areas? Because then we'd have to describe
Yes.
that, right? Define that?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, when we're looking at the policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just go back to like, what's the purpose of the policy? It's so that we can ask people to leave facilities if they're breaching this policy. Is that
that's
right?
for the public, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine, that works. In section 4, roles and responsibilities, the CEO is responsible for the implementation and administration of this policy. And then it goes on to council members. So 3.1, I just question whether the order is right there in that policy, if that 4.1 should have been included in that point in there or not. My problem is I read this on Friday and I was trying to reflect my mind or reflect back. Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering why it's in that area, why the CAO is listed first under 4.1, and then it goes on for council members beneath that. I'm just wondering if that's if that's where the CEO should come in. It is further, it's crossed out down and then brought up to this point, and I'm just questioning about.
I would have to ask our legal counsel why she moved it, but you're correct. Generally, the responsibilities of council are listed first, and then it goes to CAO. So we could switch 4.1 and 4.2.
Okay. And then 4.2B would be in all their work, and maybe it should just read in all their elected duties. It's a broad term for us because it really reflects to elected officials when they're outside when they're not doing their elected duties. So I just wonder if needs to include elected duties under 4.2B. Support, promote, and foster the principles of this policy in all their work, and I'm just wondering if it shouldn't say in all their elected work. and interactions, just to be more clear as to when it comes into play.
Councillor Hutchinson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just with adding your comment there, I mean, I feel that this policy has to be upholded regardless of whether we're at an elected event or function or anything like that. I think as elected officials, we should have that standard regardless of where we're at. So I'm fine with it just the way it states, but
Well, this really just only applies to when you're on public property anyways, right? In the term of public property as defined, which is town
I'm
facilities,
just concerned
so.
about interpretation. Or even the word strive to. So then, in 4.3A, the word strive to, I think they should be taken out. I don't think it's a point that we strive, I think we must do it. Strive to really is sort of like, well, maybe. So I just question why the word strive to were added in that one.
I would have to ask legal counsel why she put it in, but I guess,
It really takes the onus off them, because you can say, well, you're striving to do it, and then if you've done it, well, I strive to do the best. I just question that, because it really reduces the amount of emphasis it puts on what we're trying to accomplish here.
just looking for guidance from council.
Okay.
In or
Well,
out, or?
is there a problem with removing it, Mr. Kraus?
No.
And then I'll go to Councillor Alt.
Feeling when the management is striving to ensure something, they can't, I don't feel they can monitor everybody's actions at every minute of the day. So we put through the policies and procedures and rules, we're doing our best to make sure that everybody follows them, but admin and management isn't gonna be at every function to police it. So they're gonna do their best they can to make sure the policies are being followed, but unless they're gonna stand behind every person at every event, it's pretty tough to make them fully responsible for that.
Yeah. However, that's the whole point of the policy, is to ensure that the workplace and the business and blah, blah, blah. It's not that we're hoping to, like, I would be fine with removing it or leaving it, but removing it makes it sound like in the context of what we're trying to achieve. So, would we like to remove that? Does anybody have a problem with removing to strive to and leaving as it was before? So if we could have that removed then, Mr. Schipult, or Councillor Schipult? do you
I
have
would
a-
like to see that removed, because I think there's
Yep.
no need to open a door to say, well, we tried.
Yeah,
I don't think that's good enough. I think we really need to execute. I mean, that's what this bylaw is about, is executing, not almost executing. So that word really allows for almost. So, I'm getting to the bottom of my list.
okay,
Um,
next one.
4.3 D and F. And they refer to us taking refreshers on an annual basis, and/or staff. And I just question if it has to be done on an annual basis or every 2 years. So I just, again, trying to remove some burden from management to where they have to come and say, okay, time for refresher on this. If we need to do it every year, or if every 2 years would be ample.
So along with that, would, like, training, we're not, is training defined then? Like, because the part where it defines it is all scratched out behind, right? Train council's members on the policy at the beginning of each term of office. It's just one time, each term of office, so that's once. And then a refresher training. So is training defined somewhere in there?
Or reviewed. I mean, we could print it as part of the organizational meeting, that the policy's in there for council to review.
Yeah. That would, but Counselor Hutchinson, she's got her light on, so let's hear from her.
Well, it does say under E, training should be meaningful, interactive, and involve group work where participants can work through various case studies highlighting appropriate and inappropriate behavior. So it is defined in there what training is.
Yeah, so if we changed it to review the policy at the beginning of each term of office, review at the annual organizational meeting, the policy, like we do for all the other policies, and train at the beginning of your term. That would save some costs, like how many times do you need to get trained on the same thing throughout your year? So then, would you be more sympathetic for D would say, review the policy at the organization meeting once a year, and E would say, council members are trained at the beginning of each term?
Yes. Yeah, I'm under the impression here that the way this reads, all staff, everybody would get trained on an annual basis, or and you refresh would happen on an annual basis, and I think that may be overkill. So I'm just trying to lessen the impact that there would be on staff and council. So if we change it to what you're suggesting, we do it every 4 years. I was gonna suggest every 2 years, but 4 years,
Well,
whatever. Yeah.
whichever, right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to clarify
Mhm.
what you'd like to see done. I'm gonna go to Counselor Phillips, and it's on the same,
Yep.
yeah.
So if we look at D and E, and if we change that to the organizational meeting in October for council, that fixes D and E, but it doesn't address F, where F says that the employees will receive annual training of, and, meaningful, interactive, involving work. So, we've addressed council, but if we don't address the employee side of it, that means this is something that happens every year with employees. So is it something that we want to happen every year with employees?
So on F, it says all new employees, and I'm assuming that it's, once you're brought on the team, if you haven't had that training, then it's part of your training?
It does
To
say-
be a volunteer contractor or a new employee?
And then it says annually, they'll have refresher training annually thereafter.
So you'd like to have an annual review? Review the
I'm-
policy annually?
I'm just questioning is this something that needs to be done annually with the employees?
Yes.
Are we just readdressing the policy, or are we doing the full meal deal like we're saying in that paragraph? Because they're two different things.
So you're asking the question, but what would you prefer? Do you have a
I guess
suggestion, is what I'm
that's for
asking?
council's discussion. I'm not sure if yearly needs to be done, maybe every second year, maybe more appropriate. I'm not sure. Obviously, that's something we have to discuss as a council.
So I'm gonna go to Counselor Hutchinson, but just to clarify, what you're asking is that, yes, it should be train all volunteers, but should the training be annually, or?
Yeah, should it be refreshed annually or every second year, or how does that look? Because the way this reads, we're having a full-on training workshop every year for all employees.
Correct, okay. Counselor Hutchinson?
I think it's such an important topic that we should be having it yearly. I just think that that things are changing every day on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and I like the idea of keeping the training in on a yearly basis.
Counselor Ald?
And it does say in there, refresher training annually thereafter, so I think that can be a short 20-minute deal on their staff meetings. I think it could be worked in there. I agree with Councillor Hutchinson that it should be reviewed annually.
Okay, so we just want to clarify then that, that it would be, yeah, so then it's worded right then. Is that right, Counselor? I'm gonna go to Counselor Phillips first. So if we leave it the way it is and we say, maybe it needs 2 sentences rather than one really long sentence. Train all employees, volunteers, and contractors on this policy at the commencement of their employment or services, period. Provide refresher training annually thereafter. that's what we're asking for.
Yeah.
But are you suggesting that we maybe
No,
need it
I'm-
biannually?
I'm not suggesting that we change that. What I'm doing is I'm just stating that if we've changed D and E, that council's only reviewing to get the policy every October, that F is a different meaning. And if we're doing it every year with the employees, that's fine. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that D, E are different from F, that's all.
Mr. Kraus, what kind of a cost burden do you think it would be to leave it as it is?
None, your worship.
Thank you. Does that solve most of the questions? Mr. Schiffelt, Counselor Schiffelt, sorry.
Well, when my original comments were about 4.3 D and F, both of those, because I thought it was maybe overkill in terms of us doing that. If there's no cost to it, if the course is online, there's a whole bunch of things that come into, like I have no idea, but it's a one-on-one, or if it is online, that would make a difference in how we go.
Okay.
So,
So I think the changes are suggested to say that we do it at the beginning of each term, just to clarify, and provide a review for us, for council members, in October of the policy, right? So then we can, put any updates in then. Because it's good to review our policy every year on this, right? That's what you're saying. We'll leave that in there as changed. Does that sound fair to Councillor Hutchinson?
I think we can certainly add review the policy, but I still think that council amongst ourselves should review, or should take refresher training annually as well.
I'm just wondering, would there be a cost? And, because even if it's just our time, right? It's a cost to the community, and that's fine, but is that what you're meaning?
If council isn't, at the top of the pyramid, following and understanding exactly what the policy is and taking refresher training, at the end of the day, it could be a really big expense to the town. So I just think that we're the top of that culture, whatever you want to call it, and I just think it wouldn't hurt for us to take refresher training.
Okay, so you would like D to stay as it is, if I'm understanding you correctly. Have D to stay the way it is, but add in that we'll review the policy at the October organizational meeting to that. Yeah, does that sound what you're meaning? Does that work for you, Councillor Schiffelt?
yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. Is that, have we made that clear enough for administration? Yeah?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Did you have another question or concern, Councillor Schiffelt?
I had my last one, which was 5.6 under reporting, but now that I'm reading it, maybe I read it someplace else, because it said in there that formal complaints, 2 counts to be made, either written or verbal. And now as I read this, it says writing to the CAO, someplace, I was just trying to take the word verbal out of it, that all complaints had to were written.
Not in this document, where it says verbal? Okay, so then check mark. Laura's computer wants to do an update. Or it's recess. So that's summarize all your questions?
I'm not sure where I read that, I made a note of it, it allowed for both verbal and written, and this one it says written, so I'm okay with that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns about this policy? Okay, so just to refresh, the amendment is just going to be a little bit of phrasing on, Mr. Kraus, do you know what because we discussed 3 different items, and we're just making a small change to the wording on
Yes.
whichever number?
So, your worship, what council has asked for is to add the word active to section 2.1 for
Okay.
active contractors. Switch the order of 4.1 and 4.2. In 4.3, remove the word strive to. And in 4.3D, add review at the organizational meeting.
Okay. Does anybody have any problems with those amendments? So if we made a motion as amended, then we can proceed forward with the document?
Yep.
Okay. Would somebody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion with the amendments that we move forward with this bylaw.
Policy.
This policy for the anti-racial discrimination and anti-racism policy. 004/2023.
So let's just read what Laura has written, so we don't have to go over it again at the review of the minutes. Council rescind the exclamation policy. I have to read out loud. Laura, move your Calabrese thing. And adopt an anti-racial discrimination and anti-racism policy 004/2023 as with the following amendments. Insert amendments. Okay. Does that sound like the motion you'd like to make, Councillor Schipult?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Seeing there's no further discussion on that item, we'll move forward to the 7.2, the RFD for Alberta Air Tour of Central Alberta. Mr. Kraus, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So council has asked administration to contact the MLA to see what involvement they would like to see for the town for the air tour. He has responded, and I think he's pretty much asking for what would happen last year, in which the chamber put on. Basically, a pancake breakfast, possibility of the car show moving out there like it did last year. And that would be held from 8 to 10 a.m. on that specific day with some speeches at 9 o'clock.
So it must have been 2 years ago that you're recalling, because last year it was the air group that did it. What are they? And Compassionate Care did the breakfast. It's been 2 years ago
Okay.
where we had stuff going on differently. Does that sound right? No? Doesn't matter.
No, just talking to the airport manager, he said last year was the chamber, so maybe we're.
No, Compassionate Care did the barbecue, or the breakfast.
I think the chamber organized.
No, it was the,
No.
whatever the group of, the Copa Club. The Rocky Flying Club did that.
Oh, okay.
I was there, so I know that's how it was. It wasn't the chamber that did it, but I'm glad that if the chamber would like to do it, that would be great. So, we're just looking for today, money? Is that, or you want further direction?
So, thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, we are looking for direction of how council wants to proceed with this. We ask the Flying Club to take this on and council support them, or council's involvement in it, flipping pancakes or
Okay.
making speeches.
So I have a question. It says, that we were to instruct administration to contact Clearwater County regarding the airport being the first stop of the air tour. Did we actually contact them and hear back from them at all before today?
Your Worship, I have not talked to Mr. Emmons on that yet. So we're just looking for direction to see if council wants to take on this initiative, or we want to find a third party to take on this initiative and coordinate from there.
Okay. So we're waiting to have further instruction before we talk to Clearwater County about it? Or they've just been busy?
Well, I think what's undetermined, like, who's taking the lead on this event. Like last year was the Flying Club, but council asked us to find out the information, so we're just unclear what role council wants the town to take in leading this event or finding an organization to take on the event.
Okay. Councillor Hutchinson?
I can't remember when it was that we had this discussion, but we talked about county and town working together on promoting the town and county, you know, as one group, and had talked about this possibly being an event that we could do together that way. Having said that, I think if the chamber has done it in the past, I would certainly support the chamber organizing. Council could provide the $500 small grant for it and have the option there for maybe all of council and Clearwater Council to maybe flip the pancakes or serve or do something so that who can be there will be there and participate together.
So I know where you heard that from. It was at the ICC Tri-Council meeting. That was the first place. And then at the March 7th, 2023 meeting, that was the motion that was made, that we were to instruct administration to contact Clearwater County regarding the Rocky Mountain House Airport being the first stop. So, you know, we haven't got any feedback from them. I understand that Shane's given us, or MLA Getson's given us information back. I did talk to Neil and Loretta, Neil Cook and, not Loretta, Lorraine, Crane, Lenora Crane. And she says that the airport committee is getting ready for the aerobatic competition the next weekend with lots of things happening. And I love the idea of the chamber looking after this, and if we could have like some sort of a trade fair booth, you know, with a town booth set up with, you know, like what we did to encourage economic development and in our area, that would be great. I didn't have a formal meeting with Neil or Miss Crane, but I just know that's what's going on. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, I support, you know, doing the $500 small grant and encouraging either the chamber or the flying club to spearhead the breakfast, you know, and with the potential of having maybe our council and Clearwater Council, as Councillor Hutchinson had said, flipping pancakes and greeting, but I think we can provide the small grant, and it would be nice to see if the chamber or some other group could take on the actual organization of the breakfast.
Yeah. And just so you know, if we are touching food, we all have to take the food touching course, like what Sobeys take, like that online course beforehand. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, thank you. The Food Safer Food Handling course. So if we have to plan that into our schedules, if we're suggesting that we're doing that. Last year I went to it and I just visited with everybody that attended. The furthest away was Fort St. John, BC. No, is it Fort St. John or St. John, BC? Fort St. John, BC. And that was Judy and her husband. Yeah, that's good.
Sure. Yeah, if we're done discussing this item, I'd be prepared to make a motion that we instruct administration to provide a $500 small grant and encourage either the Chamber of Commerce, Flying Club, or another group to organize this breakfast and potentially have both councils represented at that breakfast.
Can we also add that someone from economic development would have a booth there showcasing and answering questions to promote our community? Or administration, how would that work? You know, when they go to trade fairs and stuff, same idea.
I mean, I can add that to my motion as well, that we have, would that be a town information booth present as well?
Does anybody else have any,
Just a
Just
friendly
waiting till
amendment, if I could, Your Worship,
yes,
and that's weather providing. Because, I mean, if the weather's not conducive to that, then I don't think we have it. So I think we just have to add that in as a friendly amendment, just weather providing.
I would happily accept that as an amendment for sure. That's a good point.
Counselor Phillips, if you reread that, is that, I'm gonna have him reread, just make sure that's what he wants first. Laura's still typing.
And one other thing was to have council participation of some sort, whether we're flipping burgers or just greeting, whichever.
Okay, I want to do Clearwater County as a completely separate motion because it was missed on the March 7th motion, and I think I'd like to have it as a clear motion separately. There's a lot going on in that one. Would you be fine with that, Counselor Phillips?
If we want to break that into two motions, I'm fine with that.
So you're happy the way it reads now? Counselor Hutchinson?
Yes.
I would just suggest if we just added, further that council instruct administration to provide a town information booth at the event and invite Clearwater County to do the same, as opposed to two motions.
Yeah, so we've already instructed administration to contact Clearwater County regarding the Rocky Mountain House Airport on the March 7th, 2023 motion moved by Counselor Phillips. Do we need to redo it again? Counselor Hutchinson?
I don't believe it's redoing it. I'm just saying if we're stating in our motion that we're going to provide a booth, I just think that it would be cordial that in the motion we put and invite Clearwater County to do the same. Just to cover our bases.
What?
And I'm perfectly fine to add that to my amendment, or if we want to have a second amendment, I'm fine with that either way. Actually, I'll just add it to my amendment and let me make it simpler.
I see she's already
Yes.
typing it, so
Yeah.
before you finish talking. Okay, you happy with that amendment? Everybody had a chance an opportunity to read that thoroughly? Any further discussion on that motion? So I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, that was 7.2. Now we're on 7.3. Resolution for Alberta Municipalities 2023 Convention regarding homelessness. Mr. Kraus, did you want to?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So council has asked administration to draft a resolution for the Alberta Municipalities Conference on Homelessness. So administration has done that and is presenting to council to make sure this is what council desired. And if council approves it, then we'll be seeking a seconder and submitting to Alberta municipalities.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, I like the part in here where we have that we're asking them specifically to invest in rural municipalities and looking at rural needs as opposed to the large urban centers. That's the best part of this, is that we're doing this for rural municipalities, because homelessness is not just a large urban center problem. It's an everywhere problem. So I like the way it's written.
And I believe, did you speak with Nancy Dodds yesterday? Mayor Dodds from Drayton Valley. I couldn't get on to that link. She sent an email back saying that you would talk to her about it and to send her your thing.
So this is in regards to the mayor's meeting of municipalities talking about homelessness. So I was part of a Zoom meeting probably about 2 months ago. And
Okay.
on that meeting, I had said that we were looking at doing this, and then once we had something like this, that it could be forwarded on to them.
Okay.
But I wasn't part of the meeting yesterday, no.
Okay, so the meeting yesterday, okay, that, I thought you attended, and it was canceled yesterday because of, I think it was some, anyways, doesn't matter. So that's why I was just trying to follow up with that. Because she said that she would like to have a copy soon as we've decided on it. Anybody other comments or questions on this resolution for the Alberta municipalities? Deputy Mayor Boniface.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just further to this, that Mr. Kraus and myself spoke to the minister and we brought up this as well at that time.
Oh, excellent. So I don't see any issues with the way it's written. Did somebody want to make a motion? Counselor Ald.
I'll make the motion that council proceeds with this and tries to find a seconder for our AM resolution.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other discussion on that item, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So now we're on to new business. Council discussion of the consent agenda. Mr. Kraus, did you want to talk about that before we get going on that?
Your Worship, so this is Councillor Phillips' addition to the agenda, so,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, so some of the committees I sit on have started to adopt consent agendas as part of their agendas. And what it's intended to do is streamline the meetings and take some of the mundane things out of the meetings, like approving minutes, correspondence for information, action lists, things like that, that we typically look at. And it just takes time to look at it, talk about it, go through the motion, accept it. This way you can lump all of that into what's called a consent agenda, and then you approve the consent agenda, and then you're not approving 5 or 6 different items separately. It's just a tool to maybe streamline our meetings a little bit, because they have, been carrying on a little bit long. And this is maybe a tool that we can use to streamline our meetings a little bit, that's all.
Okay. So my question then is to Mr. Kraus. Legally, are we allowed to do a consent agenda with how we have to do our accepting of minutes and making motions and stuff?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So council would have to amend the procedural bylaw to put consent agendas into the process.
Okay, and that would be the only downfall of looking at consent agendas?
Downfall, Your Worship.
Only issue?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a administrative, legislative procedure.
Councillor Shippold?
Your Worship, a question for Mr. Kraus. How many items would affect on our agenda? Because right now we do, for example, correspondence comes in and we make one motion for that. So I look at that and I go, is it going to affect a significant portion of our agenda to actually even worry about? So that's my question.
Yeah, so it would be, Your Worship, so it'd be up to council what they would want to be part of the consent agenda. Just going through our current agenda, so your minutes would probably be one. Your core for information would be another one. Council can decide whether they want reports as part of the consent agenda and the action list, but that probably be the 4 items on the agenda that may go into a consent agenda, and that would be up to council's discretion.
Okay. Councillor Hutchinson?
I mean, I don't mind this idea, but I think that part of what this council and last council had strived to do was being accountable and transparent. And I just feel that if, I know to us, these things are kind of unimportant and just take time, but to the public, I think there may be questions.
Yeah, so I really appreciate, Councillor Ald.
I was just gonna basically echo Councillor Hutchinson. I'm quite comfortable with the way we run our meetings. I don't think the consent agenda is gonna streamline it that much more. I know I agree, Len, things definitely seem to run on at times, but I don't see that a consent agenda really speeding up the process, so I would just be in favor of leaving it as is.
Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, and this is just something that I've seen used in other committees that I'm on, and it works effectively, and I just thought it was for discussion that we could have this at a council meeting and discuss it. If we decide not to go with it, that's fine, but I just thought anything we can do to streamline a meeting, and not that we wouldn't be transparent or anything, but just something to streamline a meeting so that we can spend more time talking about the important things.
So thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention because I'd not heard of a consent agenda in my not-for-profit experience. And so I appreciate that. And we've had lots of discussion about the agenda and agenda committees and things like that. So it's just one more piece of information for us to review. And I agree. And I think that the agenda, as we've discussed previously, is good the way it is. Like even, for example, today we've made like 3 or 4 changes to things that would have been on the consent agenda that you'd have to bring out and in. And sometimes even things for information we bring to the forefront. So that's what my feeling is. Councillor Shippold?
I'd like to make a motion, if I could, Your Worship, and that would be that we accept the information brought forward to us as information.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comments on that topic, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving forward in the agenda, we're at 8.2, council discussion for personal vehicle reimbursement. So that's our travel and expense policy 002/2019. And Mr. Kraus, was it someone on council that brought that forward? Yeah. Did you want to start off with that then, Councillor Shippold?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I brought it forward. It may be a bit redundant because we have a review and process of our remuneration plan. But what the number one thing I want to bring forward is the policy of not getting paid for using your own vehicle. And so the provincial government has a policy in place where you get paid, I believe it's 16.5 cents per kilometer if you choose to take your own vehicle. And when there's a government vehicle that you could use. And so prior to the review, I'd like to have that injected into our policy and change the wording in the policy of where it's compulsory to take the town vehicle unless it's been pre-booked. We've ran into, and I've only been here short term, and there's been times when the town vehicle is being used and the times aren't consistent to make it work for everybody to use that one vehicle. So my hope is that we could do that. The meal plan to me is out to lunch. When we were at RMA, a lot of municipalities really have changed it and ratcheted it up to where in one case, one municipality I talked to went to $50 for supper. And I look at what our current rate is and I go like, wow, that's significant, but that is under review and a month or 2 isn't going to hurt anything. But in this case, I'm hoping that council would look at an amendment to our travel policy to inject the provincial rate per kilometer for using your own vehicle if there is a town vehicle available. I mean, it's not fair that you should have to pay that fee out of your own pocket and get nothing for it. You know, if times aren't consistent. So anyway, that's where I'm at. So I'd like to open that up and see what everybody else thinks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips?
I guess, you know, a perfect example of what Councillor Shippold's talking about is at the RMA convention, the 3 of us went to that convention. Unfortunately, the times didn't work where we could, our schedules are so vastly different that we couldn't travel at the same time together. And I think that's probably more where Councillor Shippold is going, is that yes, I did take the town vehicle and use the town vehicle for sure, but because the schedules of the other two didn't match up with the time that everyone could go, there's other vehicles going that, unfortunately couldn't travel in the town vehicle because of either work restrictions or times, so I think that's probably what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, like I stayed extra for that Brownlee seminar on Wednesday afternoon, and so I couldn't have come home with you anyways. And I know that in the past, we do work to carpool as much as we can. I even phoned Jenny and her schedule didn't work with mine, like even on the county to see if we could carpool. So I'm in favor of looking at if the town vehicle's available, but you choose to take your own vehicle for safety and comfort and whatever else. I think that would be fair. Counselor Hutchinson.
I just wanted to comment that we're also getting paid per diem for travel. And a lot of companies don't pay you a per diem rate to travel. They either pay a vehicle rate or they pay an hourly rate or whatever. It's not necessarily getting both, so, your travel expenses maybe could be included in the per diem that we're getting to be driving from point A to point B.
I don't know who was first, so Counselor
Just-
Phillips.
Yeah, just in regards to Counselor Hutchinson's comment, the per diem is for your time. That's what the per diem is for. It's for your time driving to an event. So if you're driving 3 hours to an event, that pays for the time that you're there. The vehicle allowance is because you spent gas, tire wear and,
Insurance.
wear and tear in your car, insurance, everything else. So they are, in my mind, two separate issues. One is your time, the other one is the vehicle wear and tear.
Thank you very much. Counselor Strippel, was that what you were gonna?
Yes, Councillor Phillips, Your Worship, Councillor Phillips did mention exactly what I was going to mention. So moving forward to get this item, I would make the motion that we change our travel expense policy and that for out-of-town trips, where your own vehicle is used, that a rate of, the provincial rate, which presently sits at 16.5 cents per kilometer, be used to reimburse anybody traveling out with their own vehicle. I don't know if you, again, the policy would have to be changed and or amended to fit this, so.
16.5 cents, so 0.165. So you could go dollar, yeah.
And Mr. Kraus, I'd ask you on that if that makes sense and if we could do that.
So, Your Worship, just for clarification, are you trying to amend the policy today? Okay, so then your resolution would be that council amend the travel policy by, let's see, that section 10.1.2 be amended in the travel and expense policy to reflect
10.1.
if you want to reword that section, is probably the easiest way to do it. That mileage or vehicle allowance will be approved at a rate of 16.5 cents when the employee uses their own vehicle, even when a town vehicle somewhere is available.
I'm gonna wait for her to do her magic before we can continue on. Does anybody have anything else to discuss while Laura's working her magic on the motion? And this policy is going to be discussed by the new task force, correct?
Your Worship, yeah, in how it, not the entire policy, but just how it reflects for council remuneration. So there might be, at the end of the day, this might go into council's remuneration policy versus the travel and expense. So one would apply to council and one would, but they would match.
Okay. And so the meals that are in here that he mentioned, that's gonna be reviewed, or do we have to ask the task force to review that portion?
Yeah, it's part of the review package for the remuneration.
Just making sure we got all the motions we need on the board before we move on. Counselor Auld, did you wanna have a comment before we vote on this?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss the motion. Thank you. I don't feel that is gonna save taxpayers any money. I feel that we have the town vehicle which is available to be used. It has proven to save this council money. I feel that this motion is gonna just allow everybody to just take their own vehicle. There won't be any attempt for carpooling. And I can see it being at a significant increase in expense by council. So I am not in favor of that motion for those reasons.
How many out of that town events have you attended in the last 2 years?
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, if you're not attending anything out of town, then the policy hasn't been affecting you directly. So I'm just wondering how often this policy directly affects you.
It directly affects me because I'm a taxpayer of this town as well. And in the past, I have 90% of the time used my personal vehicle and had not been an issue. So I am looking at this from a ratepayer situation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I would echo Councillor Auld. Again, I feel that I understand it's vehicle expense, which is one thing, but we're also getting paid to be sitting in a vehicle and driving, whether it's our vehicle or the town vehicle. So I'm not in favor of it either.
Thank you very much. So I believe that we're, Laura, are you just about ready for us to? Councillor Phillips, you want one last?
Yeah, I just do have one comment regarding this, is I know there's times when there's out-of-town meetings and, you know, people will stack personal things on top of out-of-town meetings so that you're not wasting time going 2 times to different places, which means you're not necessarily gonna take the town vehicle because you don't wanna take the town vehicle to a doctor's appointment or fill in the blank, wherever you're gonna go. So it kind of penalizes in a way because you're not gonna take the town vehicle because you don't wanna use it for personal business, but your primary reason to go was for a meeting, and efficiently you're trying to stack other things on top of that just to be efficient with your time. So that's what my only concern with, you know, the rigidity of what we have with the other, but I would encourage using the town vehicle as much as possible, for sure.
Councillor Schipholt?
Well, and I understand where a couple of my counselors are coming from. We do have that interest in pecuniary, or looking after the dollars of the town. But RMA was a perfect example where nobody's schedules worked, and so I think that this isn't 54 cents a kilometer, it's 16 cents a kilometer, so it's not a big dollar amount. And I think that none of us should be penalized for making any miles anywhere we go, if in fact we can't change our schedules or work our schedules around making it all work. I think we are all realistic individuals, and we'll carpool when possible, and we'll use a town vehicle when possible. And when not possible, then no reason to be punished. And I think the bylaws of SIPS punishes elected officials in some senses. So I guess in this case, I support the motion, and will support that motion I've made, and ask for everyone else's support moving forward. And I do think that the elected officials, the community at large, understands that you shouldn't be out-of-pocket expense for going to anything, so.
Thank you very much. So at this time, if there's no further discussion, I'll call that motion on the board. So Councillor Schipholt, do you want to reread that motion to make sure that it's correct?
I think the only thing is that in that motion, it should say someplace that the priority is to take the town vehicle where possible,
So it would just be,
and to carpool where possible.
so when the, for example, Laura, would you mind putting that just right back up? So for example, you'd like it to say, when the town vehicle is available, however, employees use their personal vehicle for out-of-town trips to conduct town business? Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean. I'm not sure I agree with you, the wording, but that's sort of where I'm at, is that the priority should always be the town vehicle and carpooling regardless.
Okay, so Laura, could you add that there? The priority? Yes, it's the one above. Yeah, it is all covered there, except for, all you're saying is, for 10.1.2, it says, you're not allowed under any circumstance, and you're putting a circumstance in. So then, are you happy with the way it reads? And do you want it to say employees or council members? It's both? Okay.
No. I'm sorry. I guess what I'm trying to say is it should be recommended town vehicles taken when possible. And should they choose to take their own vehicle, then here's what happens. Encouraged, maybe.
So, Your Worship, just for clarification to administration, so I think this can be read two ways. I mean, now if a town vehicle is not available,
Or you're only getting 16 cents.
so does council want us to review, draft the wording and bring it back to council versus trying to?
I like that motion.
I like that idea. Let me just withdraw my motion if I could, Your Worship, and, or table the motion to a further meeting once we get clarification on the wording of what the motion would look like.
That sounds fair. Do I have to make a motion? Do I have to do a vote on tabling it? All in favor of tabling this agenda item till administration comes back with a reworded document? Any discussion on that? All in favor of tabling it? And those opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving forward in the agenda, we are now at the RFD for RCMP clerk agreement. So this is a rise and report from ICC, 8.3.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the ICC committee reviewed the attached agreement in council's package, and really what this agreement does is formalize a long agreement with the county that has never been into a written agreement, and as part of our ICF to accomplish. And it actually simplifies the process. So over the years, the county has generously contributed approximately 50%, well, 50% to the RCMP clerks, but that was on a clerk-by-clerk basis, so some clerks were 25% county, 75% town, some were 50-50, and some were the opposite. So what this agreement does is just formalize that. It makes it a lot simpler, and it just says 50% of the costs of the RCMP clerks. So Clearwater County has also reviewed this agreement and actually endorsed it at their last council meeting last week.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on this item? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Counselor Capero.
I will make the motion. Be it resolved that council accept draft RCMP clerk's cost share agreement, authorize the mayor and CAO to endorse the agreement.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So now we've got the additional item 8.4, abuse of elected officials conference. Counselor Phillips.
Yes, so we did receive an email yesterday regarding a conference that is available to attend on April 27th and 28th in Edmonton. It's specifically designed because abuse for elected officials province-wide has escalated quite dramatically. But if we waited until our next regular council meeting to discuss this, it's almost going to be too late for anyone that wants to attend it to be able to attend it. So I just wanted to bring it to today's meeting to discuss and see if we do or do not want to have anyone attend this meeting or not.
Is it 2 days or is it just 1 day?
It's April 27th and 28th, so 2.
2 days. Okay. Is there anybody interested in attending already? Sorry, Counselor Capero, your light's on.
Oh.
No, that's okay. I was like, did I miss something? Okay, Counselor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I had checked into this about a week ago and really wanted to go, but I can't make it because I have a senior housing commitment. But I would recommend someone go and bring back some really good information.
Counselor Phillips.
I am available to attend this. I'm not sure if any other council members want to join as well. I do believe that this is it's a very serious up-and-coming problem for elected officials, and it will become a very serious problem in elections when no elected officials want to run in elections. So I do believe that this is a very important topic. So yes, I am able to attend.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor Shipwell, your light's on.
Yes, it is, Your Worship. I would attend with Councillor Phillips if he so chooses to have a passenger.
Okay.
That'd be awesome.
Okay. Actually, I'm interested in attending. My schedule has lots of last-minute things pop up in it, so I need to review, because this was just presented today. I need to review, so if we could add me in with the option that if something else comes up, I can adjust it as I need to see fit. I see no other discussion. Councillor Phillips, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that council approve any council members that want to attend the conference on April 27th and 28th.
Thank you very much. I'll call that to a vote if there's no other discussion. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, we have correspondence for action, invitation for the Rocky Museum lunch and tour on April 11th. So it was just an invitation from the Rocky Museum. They have some new outdoor exhibits, and they're having a tour April 11th, 2023 at 10:30, followed by lunch at 11:30 a.m. in the lower level of the museum. So is anybody able to attend that event? Councillor Hutchinson?
I think I can attend that one,
Okay.
or we'll just make a motion that anybody who wishes.
Well, I think I'd like to let administration know today, because it's a week away, who's able to go. And so if we could decide that now, because it was on the agenda for a couple days, who all is able to attend that. I'm able to attend that. Councillor Hutchinson, Councillor Auld, are you able to attend that day?
I believe so, but I would just make a motion if we're ready for that.
I would like to tell administration who can go so they can get back, because it's a week away.
I'd just like to make a motion that council instruct administration to inform the museum that any counselor that is available will attend.
Perfect. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Invitation for the musical ride, June 6, 2023. That is not on the same weekend as the AAPG thing, correct? It's 3 days following or before? 3 days after. And it's on the same day as our council meeting. Does anybody have a problem with anyone attending from council to that event? Would somebody like to make a motion that anyone is able to attend? So, do so. Councillor Hutchinson.
I just wanted clarification, because it's specifically inviting the mayor, or in your absence, a member of town council. So is the invitation open to all of us, or just one? That was just my question before we went farther.
Excellent question. Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Your worship, I think the intent is the mayor, and if the mayor cannot, then another member of council.
Okay. I'll have to double check my schedule. And so we'll just I'll make a motion to accept for information, and I will let administration know of my availability. Can send someone in my stead if they're available. Any questions on that motion? Perfect. I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So that's 9.2. Moving forward in the agenda, 9.3, Campus Alberta Central Post-Secondary Committee request for Town of Rocky Mountain House representative. Councillor Shipalt, are you going to do that one?
Yes, I brought this forward last council meeting, I believe, and council asked for a letter to come from the Rocky Learning Center in regards of having somebody on the post-secondary committee. So I've requested that letter. This is a letter that they forwarded since, and I've met with them again yesterday.
Sunday.
Yesterday again, hooking up the hospital with them to see how we could get anybody in the medical field interested. So this letter's forward, and I would hopefully get to sit on this and continue to sit on this to try to drive secondary learnings in our community with our hospital and Red Deer College Polytech. So that's what the letter's about, and I'm hoping I can be the one who continues on that.
So I have a question for Mr. Kraus. Is that something we have to change our,
So, yeah,
organizational meeting?
So it doesn't have to change at the organizational meeting. Council can appoint to the committee today, and then we just add that committee onto the committee list for the organizational meeting.
Okay, so I would like to be your spare, if that's possible. In case you can't go, it's nice to have already set up who can also attend. The meeting that they had on March 14th was very informative, and I think it's an important asset to our community to continue fostering and promoting post-secondary education in Rocky. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, this falls directly into our strategic plan. I mean, we're looking at trying to keep our young youth here in the community, and we're trying to get them to be educated in the community so they'll stay in the community. I fully support a member of council being on this committee, for sure.
Councillor Phillips, did you want to make the motion at this time?
I think Councillor Hutchinson has a
Councillor
comment.
Hutchinson.
Just for clarity, it is a subcommittee under the Rocky Community Learning Council, and the committee, that committee itself has, I believe it's 4 members maybe, already sitting on that board. When I spoke with Jana about it, they are more than happy to have as many, whomever wishes to sit on that, just the more the better. And of course, with Councillor Shipley being on the Health Advisory Board, it ties in there. So if I understand your ask is for council to endorse you to go, which is great. But also if anybody else wants to just, Mayor Beach, not necessarily even being an alternate, but to join that committee as well. The more the better.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else would like to attend those meetings? We'd have to make a motion for our fiduciary responsibilities, who gets paid for what. So I think we're happy that anyone can attend, but Councillor Shippold gets paid for those meetings at this time. Sound reasonable and fair? Does somebody want to make the motion? I'll make that motion, that council appoint Councillor Shippold to the Campus Alberta Central Post-Secondary Committee and that the Mayor Beach be appointed as the alternate. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So 9.4, the small community grant request for Rum Rocky Knights Soccer. Mr. Kraus?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So council has received a request for a $500 grant to purchase T-shirts for youth coaches for their under 5 soccer teams. Just to let council know, this does not fit with the intent of the policy. The policy for grants for 500 or more for events, projects, tournaments, or those type of activities. There is a provision in the policy. Council can grant the $500 if they deem it a special project. So it would be up to council's interpretation if this is a special project.
So in the past, they usually get local sponsors and then they get their logo on the T-shirt. So I think we should leave it to that and keep this community grant funding for what it was intended. Does anybody else have any comments on that? So we'll need a motion to move forward. Councillor Phillips.
I'll make a motion that we accept item 9.4 as information.
Do we have to deny the request in the motion?
So Your Worship, accepting for your information is denying
Okay,
it, and
just
then
checking.
administration will just draft a nice follow-up letter.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. And I think right now is a perfect time for a 10-minute recess before we continue on with our agenda. So. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to resume the Town of Rocky Mountain House regular council meeting for April the 4th. We are now at 9.5, Wild Rose School Division Indigenous Education Conference. And did you notice that Glenn Waskewich is on the front page of the brochure on the left? Yeah. And yeah. So I spotted him right away. So is this something that the Wild Rose School Division has forwarded to us? And they're recommending that someone from council? Just an invite. Well, I certainly would be interested in attending that if we think it's important. Anybody else interested in attending that? Councillor Auld.
It's on April 12th, correct? Sorry,
It's a Wednesday next week.
yeah. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make that one.
Anybody
If
else
there's
interested?
No more discussion, I would definitely make the motion that the mayor attends this if she's interested in going.
Thank you very much. Is anybody else interested in attending on that day? It's Wednesday next week. No? Okay. So with no further discussion, we'll vote on that motion. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So 9.6, moving forward in the agenda, is request to proclaim May 8th to 12th of 2023 to be Economic Development Week. Mr. Krause, did you want to talk about that, or is it Ms. or Councillor Hutchinson? Would like to.
Yeah, I had received the email, and it was done in past years. It didn't happen last year, I'm not sure how come, but there's a lot of information on the Alberta Economic Development webpage. There's a toolkit that can be accessed for our EDOs to implement, to do things. I just think that it is a great opportunity to bring awareness to this area, part of our strategic plan. So there is a draft proclamation for that week that's been attached. And you also, if we link it to Alberta municipalities, it goes on there that we recognize all the hard work. So if there's any other questions, or?
Councillor Schipholt.
The links didn't work on the thing when it came to, our council packs. I'm not sure why the links, maybe it was just me.
You had to
Right.
go to the original email. The links on the one thing didn't work, but then if you went to her email between Mr. Krause and her, that's how I could get mine to work.
Often yours worked off the. Okay.
Anyways, were you able to go in and look at anything? No, okay. Did you want to bring anything else to our attention, or just make the proclamation today, Councillor Hutchinson?
I could make the motion to accept the draft proclamation that admin has put together, and have our ECDev team do whatever they need to do to promote it, and something along that lines.
So, when I looked at the toolbox, like when you went to that look and looked at the toolbox for EDOs, it pretty much was everything for Laura. She's giving me the nod. So I'm just wondering if she has time to do any of that with what she's already got going on. We'd have to do, or just leave it like that. It just really kind of describes what economic development is. It didn't give any resources on how to create it, or tools to do anything aside from letting the community know what economic development was when I looked at it. So just want to do the proclamation for today.
The last time I checked, the 2023 toolkit wasn't available as of yet, so they may be implementing something, but if we just made the motion to accept the proclamation and have, maybe do whatever's been done in the past.
Okay, that sounds great. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll put that to a vote. All in favor of that? And that seems to be carried. Yes, that's carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson, for bringing that to our attention. So moving forward in the agenda, correspondence for information. I just wanted everyone to know that I did attend the 10.1 invitation from Métis Local 845 AGM. I did already attend that, and there's some information in my report about that. And then I see that the City of Camrose hospice funding model resolution, so that'll be great. We can present that at the AB Munis. Is there anything anybody wanted to discuss in correspondence for information? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Schippold?
I will still make that motion, Your Worship, that we accept all the correspondence as information as provided on our agenda.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving forward to number 11, the mayor's report. So do we have any questions or comments about my report this month? Councillor Ald?
If there's no questions, I'll accept the mayor's report for information.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they wanted to point out for Councillor Ald's report? Councillor Ald, did you want to report on anything not in your... Okay, Councillor Caprero, did you have any questions for Councillor Caprero or her report? Councillor Hutchinson, did you want to speak about your report?
Yeah, just an update, Rocky Senior Housing. I think we are at 9 vacancies. So people are starting to fill up those spots with that dip that happened throughout COVID. And with the Rocky Learning Council, they launched a new program on Joe's social media. I think that was about 2 weeks ago. The healthcare aid program has been postponed until the fall. There's lack of registration. I think they needed 12 to have that one going, but so they'll try again to advertise and get people involved in that one in the fall. And new instruction on SAGE and Simply Accounting. They got instructors, so they're quite excited about that one.
Councillor Schippold.
So one of the things that came out of some discussions was the inability to market within our community the programs that are offered. And the question came forward is, can they put something in the utility bill newsletter? And I don't know if they can or can't. So you just spurred that thought, and so I appreciate that. That's a question probably for Mr. Kraus, if in fact Rocky Learning Council can add stuff to the town's newsletter for going out.
So, Your Worship, we pretty much keep the town newsletter to town business, I guess is what to say, and it's certainly full with different items from assessment to utilities to other items. And if we open it up to nonprofits, then it becomes a different type of paper. Do you want to say something, Stormy?
No, you're absolutely right about the newsletter, but the Rocky Learning Council would be welcome to advertise at no cost on the community boards in our recreation facilities. That avenue exists, and I do know that they take out quite a significant content in the program guide each year as well. And if this question is coming, I'll preempt it. Can we put a second slip into the utility bill? no, we can't. The machines will only do 2 sheets of paper, one for the newsletter and one for the actual invoice.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Councillor Hutchinson?
Just on that, getting exposure out there too, the board has discussed putting a booth on Market on Main, probably closer to August, not to do it for the entire duration of Market on Main, because nobody's thinking about school in July, but towards the end of August. So that was one tool that we've discussed to try and getting the word out there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips, did you have anything you wanted to highlight about your report? No. Any questions? No, seeing none. Councillor Schipholt, did you want to highlight anything in your report?
No, my 3-page report is there. Pretty much touches base on everything I attended. If anybody has any questions, I'm most certainly prepared to answer those.
Thank you very much. So seeing no further discussion, I'll make a motion to accept the reports for the council members for April 4th, 2023. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So our action list, moving forward in the agenda, action list for April 4th, 2023. I'll turn that to Mr. Kraus.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So just to go through the open action items. So the first one is the museum. So that's actually coming to the community of the whole meeting next week to look at the layout for traffic flow around the museum. Fees for criminal record checks, that's in progress, and that will be coming back. April 18th is our target date for that, as staff are working with the RCMP to figure out how to get internet into the detachment. Lease space at Rocky Regional Rec Center, that is in progress, and we are looking to bring that back also on April 18th. If I scroll down to the next one. Photo radar, that is actually coming to Committee of the Whole next week for a presentation to Council. Curtis Field light project, we have an agreement with the school division. I think I'm signing it off tomorrow, but the school has signed off on it, so that'll be done. I'm not too sure of the status between the agreement between the football club and the school division, but that's out of our control. But the town and the school division have finalized the agreement.
Can I ask a question on those light poles? The light poles have the ability that you could plug into the bottoms of them with a lockbox. So if we wanted to decorate the oval with Christmas lights, that's going to be possible. Thank you. That's wonderful. I took that as a yes. Perfect. That was the conclusion. Does anybody have any administrative, any questions on the action list for April 4th, 2023? So we'll need to accept for information. Councillor Caprero?
I will make the motion that we accept the action list from April 4th, 2023 as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving forward on the agenda, number 13, confirmation of the Committee of the Whole meeting. I see that we have a full agenda for next week, so we'll confirm that date. So we need to make a motion that we'll have. Okay. Okay, so moving forward in the agenda, do we have any administrative inquiries? I just automatically looked at Councillor Schipholt.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some. Mail in the industrial area, there seems to be a void on anything on the east side of Highway 11 for getting mail. And so I'm not sure if we can go to Canada Post. I was on council when the super boxes got brought into Rocky Mountain House, and the representative from Canada Post of the day indicated that the town would be served fully from one end to the other. And further, they indicated anywhere where there's going to be 50 or more people picking up mail in one location, that they would do something special. And that was of keen interest to me, because Killian Trailer Park was one that had 50 or more mailboxes in one area, and what they did is they really went in there and just put a bunch of boxes in a row and never did do anything special, as we were promised 20 years ago or 22 years ago. So anyway, I'm just wondering if we should maybe not talk to them and say, hey, where are you guys at with Rocky Mountain House? And especially with the industrial, anything east of Highway 11, they have no mail, so I'm just wondering if we can follow up on that.
Is there something special we have to do as a town to, when we have developments? Like, I'm just worried about if they're not developing, like giving, that's 43rd Street. Well, those new ones that we sold tee off on 43rd Street, right? We're gonna have issues with mail there.
So, Your Worship, we'll have to inquire with Canada Post. It actually falls under federal regulation, and even their location of their super boxes, we don't have much say in, but we can inquire of the status.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Maybe worth jiggling the tree and see what falls out. The second item I have is, now that we've sold 3 lots in Rocky Mountain House or 2 lots and a building, we have monies someplace, and I'm wondering if there needs to be a motion made that money would go back into reserves, or what happens with that funding, just to ensure that we have a finger on where that money goes as a council. So the question is, Mr. Kraus, would you like a motion from council to put that money into reserves and not spend it?
No, administration is not spending it, just for clarification. That will come back to council at year end with surplus and money comes, and then council will allocate it to the reserve that council wishes.
Would it not go in now into reserves, now that if the money's coming in, would there not be, would we not, what, do we have to wait till the year end? I mean, because if it goes into general revenues versus.
Ms. Quinn,
No.
do you want to explain? Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So typically, when we've had any sales, the process is, one, the revenues are shown up as part of our income for the year. We also, if the asset has been listed in our tangible capital asset subledger, we pull what the cost is out and apply that against the sale proceeds. So then we show either a net surplus or loss against these sales. That is included in the income statement. It does fall out down into the surplus deficit, but it certainly can be extracted specifically if there's any surplus and transferred to a reserve. But normally it's just part of the regular income statement.
Can I ask a question on that then? How do we know if that item then originally had a debenture or not? So like, for example, the rec building, how do we track that capital asset to see where we originally got the money for that building? And to see if it's fully paid for? And maybe not for these 3 examples specifically, but that's what it brings to mind.
Well, for that one, if there was a debenture, I'm sure it was already paid for, but we've got it set up as a fixed asset, as a building in our subledger. So we would pull whatever the unamortized cost is out of that TCA subledger and apply it against the proceeds on sale.
Okay, so if it's a capital asset, could it be used against our debentures for capital?
You mean the proceeds?
Yeah,
Typically with debentures, they're now classified as loans because they've changed, but
right.
they don't usually take prepayments anymore. They used to, but quite a few years ago they stopped doing that. So to apply it against an existing debenture, we don't typically do that. It would end up going into reserves if there was any surplus.
Okay.
We can bring a summary to council if they want to see, like, once we've pulled what the net book value of the asset that's been sold. Once we pull that, we can, is that help or answer your
Do,
question.
do we need that?
Well, I'm assuming that we're gonna be getting some kind of statement, quarterly spend on where we're at, and I know things, some are tied into seasonal costs, but, the one from last year should be coming here sometime soon, I think.
Yeah.
And with that, do we get one for the first quarter this year, and would that show up on that?
We're just starting to prepare the March quarterly statement. We could certainly add a note to it so that you're aware of what it is. I mean, council can do, typically we would run it through the statement, but, I mean, I think it's, if council wishes to move monies into a reserve during the year, you can certainly pass a motion to do that, but I can bring the information and we can include it in the quarterly statement just so that you have it.
Where my thinking was on this whole thing is that if we have $1 million that came in, are we investing that money, or does it just sit in general revenues, or, because really it's a dollar amount that we have not budgeted other than it's a surplus amount of money at this point. So what happens to it? Does it get reinvested someplace? Do we get interest on that money, or how, what's the trail?
Okay, I can answer that question. So currently with our current banking arrangements, we have a checking account. We also have an account, it's called the MUSH account, which is the Municipal University Schools and Hospitals. And they've set up a really flexible savings account. So we keep as much as we can in that account. It typically earns, it's a tiered interest rates, depending on how much you've got in it, the maximum being, once you have up to $10 million, you get the highest rate. It's typically about 0.5% lower than if you were putting money into GICs. And we also have funds in GICs. So if there's extra money that goes into our accounts during the year, we do earn interest on all of it. It doesn't just sit. So it does get put into the general account, but we make sure that we maximize interest as much as we possibly can.
Okay.
Would it be money ahead to put it, make a motion to put it when our surplus is in GICs then?
Well, all the cash that we have, like there's money that's reserve money, there's money that's just working capital, you know, from during the year, like it's just the total of all the funds that we've got.
Thank you. That answers that. As long as we're getting something. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have,
Your Worship, I have one last question, if you'd
yes,
allow me.
absolutely.
This goes back to Canada Post. So Canada Post does deliver to some businesses in town already. And today, when we talked about the town vehicle, one of its uses is to get the mail. And Canada Post delivers to like the Mountaineer or the school division. Do they deliver to the town office? Do we have a thing with them to deliver here to avoid us having to go to the post office? Have we talked to them about that? Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, we must get and send a letter to everybody with has water anyway. Yeah. Does that conclude your list of inquiries?
Your Worship, it does, and I thank you, and I thank the staff for tolerating me and asking those questions.
Okay, does anyone else have any administrative inquiries today? Seeing none, I'll move on to, is there any notices of motion today? Councillor Schipholt?
I'm sorry. I only have one notice of motion, and so that Councillor Hutchinson brought up the thing about economic development, and we've really shifted gears in what we look as priorities for our town from tourism to economic development this year. So what I'd like to do is put on the agenda for us to review economic, I just lost your name, economic partners, no, what's it called? The Central
Central.
Alberta Economic Developments, which is
Cape.
CAPE, yes, thank you. I'd like to discuss CAPE, and for a couple of reasons. I went to the mayor's meeting where CAPE was discussed, and last week CAPE had a workshop where they involved all the economic development officers who are part of that in regards to bringing employees, trying to figure out how to get employees into central Alberta. And having sat on a few different boards where finding an employee is like looking for a needle in a haystack, I think any tool that we can get that can bring people into our community would be beneficial. And so when they're having them kind of information sessions and the importance of what I think it would be, I'd like to have another discussion about joining that and understanding we as a town have changed our focus to economic development more so. And so I'm hoping that we can, at the next meeting, have another discussion or a discussion. I know it's talked about prior to my time on council, but I'd really like to revisit that if we could, please.
Thank you very much. Any other notices of motion today? Seeing none. I think we'll take a 5-minute recess before we go into closed session. Okay, thank you very much. We just finished our recess, and so we have some items on closed session today, so I'm looking for a motion to move into closed session. Counselor Shippold? You are or you're not?
I am.
Get your light back on then.
Oh, okay. I will make the motion to move into closed session.
That's why I'm
Thank you,
doing this
Worship.
at you. Okay, so I see no other discussion. I'll vote on the motion to move into closed session. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we've just come out of closed session, and I believe we have a motion, Counselor Phillips.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that council approves the draft airport agreement as presented and authorizes the mayor and CAO to endorse the agreement upon acceptance of the draft agreement by Clearwater County.
All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So I believe we have a second motion coming up. Yep. Can you turn your mic on? Counselor Hutchinson.
I'd like to make the motion that council respond to the complainants as per discussion.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. I'll go get Counselor, I have to anyways.
Nope.
Okay. And so we have no further business today? No further business today. So I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.